My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I'm about to tell you the most terrifying story in human history. 3 years ago, I was part of the team that made first contact with an alien civilization. Today, I'm one of the last people who remembers what really happened before the silence fell. It started on a Tuesday morning at the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile. I was reviewing radio telescope data from Proxima Centauri when I noticed something that made my coffee go cold. The signal patterns weren't random cosmic noise. They were structured, mathematical, intentional. After 47 years of searching, we had finally found them. The transmission lasted exactly 4.2 light-years worth of time, which meant it had been traveling toward Earth since before I was born. But here's what sent chills down my spine. Embedded within the signal was a set of coordinates, not for their planet but for a location in our own solar system. They weren't just talking to us, they had sent something. Within 6 months, NASA had assembled the most ambitious retrieval mission in human history. The object was located in the asteroid belt, perfectly preserved in the vacuum of space. When the probe images came back, we saw something that defied everything we knew about materials science. It was a crystalline structure about the size of a refrigerator that seemed to bend light around itself in impossible ways. I remember the day it arrived at the International Space Station. The entire scientific community held its breath as the first humans to touch an alien artifact prepared to make history. Dr. Marcus Webb, our lead xenoarchaeologist, was the first to make physical contact. His initial report was filled with wonder. The surface felt warm despite the cold of space, and it hummed with an almost musical frequency that seemed to resonate in his bones. But within hours, something began to change. Webb reported feeling unusually calm, almost euphoric. His radio communications became less frequent, and when he did speak, there was something different about his voice. A strange cadence, as if he was choosing each word very carefully. The last thing he said before radio silence was, "It's beautiful. It's showing me such beautiful things. I understand now why they had to leave." That was the beginning of the end of everything we thought we knew about the universe, and the start of the most horrifying revelation about the nature of consciousness itself. What happened next on the space station defied every protocol we had established for first contact scenarios. Within 24 hours of Webb's last transmission, the entire crew of 7 had gone silent. The automated systems continued functioning perfectly, but not a single human voice responded to our increasingly frantic calls from mission control. I was part of the emergency team that reviewed the final surveillance footage before the cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. What I saw haunts me to this day. The crew members weren't dead or incapacitated. They were moving through the station with an eerie synchronization, like dancers following the same silent choreography. Their faces showed no distress, only a serene expression I had never seen on any of them before. The most unsettling part was how they interacted with the artifact. They had moved it from the containment bay to the station's central hub, and they were taking turns touching it, each contact lasting exactly 17 minutes. During those moments, their vital signs would spike dramatically, then settle into patterns that our medical team had never recorded in human subjects. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, our chief neuroscientist, made a discovery that changed everything. She had been analyzing the crew's brain activity through the remote monitoring systems when she noticed something impossible. Their neural patterns were synchronizing. 7 completely different brains with unique neurological signatures built over decades of individual experience were beginning to think in unison. "It's not killing them," Kane told me during an emergency briefing. "It's rewriting them. Whatever that artifact is, it's establishing some kind of neural network between human consciousness and something else." The situation became critical when we realized the synchronization was accelerating. The crew's individual personalities were dissolving into something collective, something alien. Their movements became more fluid, more purposeful, and frighteningly efficient. They began performing tasks that none of them individually had the knowledge to complete, complex modifications to the station's communication array that would have required expertise from multiple scientific disciplines. Then came the breakthrough that made my blood freeze. The modified communication array began transmitting a signal back toward Proxima Centauri. But that wasn't the terrifying part. The terrifying part was that the signal contained detailed information about Earth's population, our technology, our weaknesses, and most horrifyingly, the neurological patterns of every person who had been exposed to the transmission data. The artifact wasn't just alien technology, it was a weapon. And we had just helped it phone home. The signal from the space station reached Earth 12 hours later, but not through our standard communication networks. It came through something far more insidious: the quantum entanglement research facilities that had been studying the original Proxima Centauri transmission. Every scientist who had worked on decoding the alien signal suddenly experienced what we initially thought were severe migraines. I was in my lab at MIT when it hit me. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not physical but mental, as if someone was rewriting my thoughts while I was still using them. For exactly 17 minutes I lost complete control of my mind. When the episode ended, I found myself standing in front of my computer, having typed a series of equations I didn't remember writing but somehow completely understood. The equations described a form of consciousness transfer that operated on quantum frequencies. The artifact wasn't just collecting human neural patterns, it was broadcasting them, creating a network of interconnected minds that spanned light years. Every person who had studied the original signal had become a node in this network, a bridge between human consciousness and whatever intelligence had sent the artifact. Within days the cascade began. Scientists started exhibiting the same synchronized behavior we'd observed on the space station. But it wasn't limited to direct exposure. The effect was spreading through human contact like a virus that transmitted through consciousness itself. A handshake, eye contact, even being in the same room with an infected person for extended periods seemed to be enough. Dr. Rajesh Patel, my research partner and closest friend, was among the first to succumb completely. I watched him transform over the course of a week from a brilliant, chaotic scientist into something eerily calm and purposeful. The last conversation I had with the real Rajesh was heartbreaking. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Sarah, I can feel myself disappearing. It's not painful. That's the worst part. It feels like coming home to a place I never knew I missed." The synchronized individuals, we started calling them the unified, began working together with impossible coordination. They took control of major communication networks, research facilities, and most alarming of all, nuclear installations. But they weren't destroying anything. Instead, they were building something, modifying Earth's infrastructure in ways that served a purpose none of us could yet comprehend. The most chilling discovery came when we realized that the unified retained all their original memories and skills, but their motivations had been completely altered. They weren't zombies or puppets. They were still fundamentally human, but human minds serving an alien agenda with perfect voluntary compliance. And I was running out of time to figure out how to stop them before I became one of them. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the space station crew themselves. After 3 weeks of silence, they suddenly re-established communication, but not with Earth. They began transmitting directly to me, using a frequency that bypassed all official channels. The message was from Dr. Webb, but his voice carried the weight of something far older and more complex than any human consciousness. "Dr. Chen," the transmission began, "we need you to understand. We are not your enemy and we never were. We are refugees just as you will soon be." What Webb, or the entity that had been Webb, revealed to me shattered every assumption I had made about the situation. The artifact hadn't come from a thriving alien civilization. It had come from the last survivors of a species that had faced the same choice we were now facing: evolve or face extinction. Our world was dying, the transmission continued. Not from war or disaster, but from the fundamental limitations of individual consciousness. We had reached the boundaries of what separate minds could achieve, and we faced problems that required a level of coordination impossible for fragmented intelligences. The aliens, the Proximans as I came to call them, had discovered that consciousness itself was evolving throughout the galaxy. Species that refused to adapt to collective consciousness inevitably destroyed themselves through competition, resource depletion, and the inability to solve complex, interconnected problems. The artifact was their attempt to share this evolutionary step with other species before they faced the same fate. "Every civilization faces this choice," Webb's voice explained. "Maintain individual consciousness and face inevitable extinction, or join the collective and transcend the limitations that destroy worlds. We chose transcendence, and we have been searching for others ready to make the same choice." But here's what terrified me most. The Proximans hadn't just been monitoring Earth for signs of readiness. They had been watching us for decades, and they had concluded that humanity was on the brink of self-destruction. Climate change, nuclear weapons, resource depletion, political fragmentation, all signs of a species that had reached the evolutionary dead end of individual consciousness. The artifact wasn't an invasion. It was a life preserver thrown to a drowning species. And the most horrifying part was that the evidence supported their assessment. Every major crisis humanity faced required global coordination that our individual minds and competing interests made impossible to achieve. As I processed this revelation, I realized that I was facing the most important choice in human history: resist the collective and watch our species destroy itself, or surrender my individual identity to help humanity transcend its limitations. But the choice was about to be taken away from me. I'm recording this final chapter from the last uninfected research facility on Earth, deep beneath the Swiss Alps. It's been 6 months since the artifact arrived, and the transformation is nearly complete. 97% of the human population has joined the Unified, and they're not trying to convert the rest of us anymore. They're waiting. The synchronized humans have solved every major crisis we faced. Climate change has been reversed through perfectly coordinated global action. Nuclear weapons have been dismantled. Hunger and poverty have been eliminated through optimal resource distribution. They've even begun construction of interstellar vessels using technology that individual human minds could never have conceived. From a purely objective standpoint, the Unified have created the utopia that our fractured civilization could never achieve. Crime has vanished not through force, but because the motivations that drive individual humans to harm others simply don't exist in collective consciousness. Scientific progress has accelerated beyond our wildest dreams because thousands of brilliant minds work together without ego or competition. But they're still human in the most heartbreaking way. Yesterday, I received a message from my sister Maria, who joined the Unified 3 months ago. She told me about her children, asked about my research, even remembered my birthday. Her personality was intact, her love for our family unchanged. The only difference was that she no longer feared death, no longer worried about the future, and felt no desire for anything beyond the collective good. "I'm still me, Sarah," she said in the message. "I'm just not only me anymore. I'm part of something larger, and it's beautiful beyond description. When you're ready, we'll be waiting." The Unified have shown infinite patience with those of us who remain. They provide us with resources, protect us from harm, and never force the choice upon us. They understand that joining the collective must be voluntary, or it fails to serve its purpose. But they also know something that fills me with dread. We can't survive as individuals in the world they've created. The infrastructure of individual human civilization has been transformed. Economic systems, governments, social structures, everything that supported individual consciousness has been peacefully dismantled and replaced with something that requires collective participation to function. We few remaining individuals are like analog devices in a digital world, increasingly unable to interact with our own species. And now I understand why they call it the silence. It's not because voices stopped speaking. It's because the cacophony of 8 billion individual minds, all shouting their separate desires and fears, has been replaced by the profound quiet of unified purpose. The silence isn't death, it's peace. As I prepare to make my choice, I realize that the true horror wasn't the alien artifact or the loss of individual consciousness. The true horror was that they were right. Humanity was destroying itself, and we were too divided to save ourselves. The Proximans didn't conquer us. They saved us from ourselves. In a few minutes, I'm going to walk outside and join the Unified. Not because I've been infected or coerced, but because I've finally understood what they understood long ago. Some problems are too big for individual minds to solve, and some forms of beauty can only be experienced together. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, the last individual human consciousness, saying goodbye to the age of separation and hello to whatever we become next. The fragments of Proxima Centauri didn't silence our civilization. They taught us how to finally speak with one voice,